Hey, y'all. Good evening. Happy Wednesday. We are back. Episode 34. Y'all, this is going to be a good talk. So I'm going to tell you right now, go get your little drink, something stronger than some Ningxia. I've got water. So if I cough, I used to be mute a lot. Y'all, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on. I got a little tickle. So this is gonna be a good talk. It's gonna be a hard one. I know I was mentioning to the ladies before we came on live that this is something that I struggle with a lot. This conversation is something that ooh, child, it's gonna be good. So we're just gonna get straight into this thing. We are talking about socially acceptable, mainly women of color, like when you have to change things up, right? Like we all know if you're going in to meet POTUS or First Lady, or you're going to meet your boss, or somebody of prestige, you're not gonna go in there with your booty hanging out and all the nonsense, right? That's just not what you're gonna do. So we're not talking about the common sense of changing things up, but we're talking about the things that you're too loud, or you're got too much swag, or like Angela like to say, you got a little flavor in your conversation, right? We're talking about those things. So those are pushed on women, I feel like, a whole lot more. And then obviously have to go a little deeper because we're talking about the differences and how the three of us managing business and the things that we notice in women of color. So this is going to be a good talk. I'm going to keep it 100% like we always do. I struggle here. This is something that, you know, boy, it's walking like a tightrope with it, because there are some things that I totally am like, I get it. Keep everything like neutral, if you will. And then there are other things that I'm like, we're not going to do. So we're going to get into it. Share this out. Make sure you tell your peeps, if they don't already follow one of the three of us or all three of us, that we are live. Grab your drink. Ladies, let's get into it. Are you socially acceptable or not?
I guess I'll kind of kick it off with, because there's so many stereotypes that I will just kind of start with in general when it comes to like being a black woman, being black, you know what I mean? And I feel like, and if you are watching this and in the comments, if you can like relate to this, but I can very distinctly remember like times of like being cussed out, the phone rings, and all of a sudden a whole different voice and person is answering the phone, right? Like you went from up here to there, right? And even if maybe it's not specific to just our race, maybe you've experienced this too, where in certain settings or certain occasions, right, you may show up just slightly different. I actually thought a little bit about this because my husband always says, he's like, Dayna, you just be Dayna no matter what, right? Like you don't care who it is, who you around. Like, there's times where he's like, you are so loud, like you gonna scare these white folks. You can't be that loud. And I just thought about that because I'm like, there are definitely times when I notice, even in myself, where someone is talking and I start maybe a little bit mimicking the way they talk or whatnot. Just by, I think, association, not necessarily like, oh, I need to be more acceptable to them or whatnot. But I do think that there's a lot of stereotypes that surround us. We're loud, right? I think there's certain things that have to be taken into play, like even when you talk about how we dress, right? What is our culture, right? Where is our baseline? I mean, I think about, not all of us are just straight from Africa, but right, you think about, they are vibrant, right? Like that's one thing that most people love about the culture. There's a lot of colors, there's a lot of flair, there's, when they walk in the room. And so being socially acceptable, sometimes who are we being acceptable to, and what are we showing up for, and why does it matter? I think all of those points are important, because if you don't put those in play first, then it might change the way you get the results you want. Okay. And I think that's where this topic is important from a business standpoint, right? Because if you're saying, hey, I want to be out here, and I want to be attractive to the masses, or I want to be attractive to get the right people, some people who might not even come in your sphere, and it's a them problem, it's not a you problem, but they might not even come to your sphere because they already have these prejudgments of what they think you are, right? And sometimes it's even unconscious biases where they don't even realize, like, oh, because she was so extra, then I strayed away and went somewhere else. So I think it's one of those things that we got to first talk about both stereotypes and then how that relates directly to business.
All right, y'all. I don't know how I feel about this topic because I could go either way with this. When, as you all know, that I am a public school educator. So with that being said, before I started my teaching career, I had to go look for a job. And I was really stressed out about how my hair looked. Hair, y'all, hair. To the point where I was going out buying wigs and weaves and everything, just like, okay, I gotta have my hair straight. I gotta have my hair straight. And the school districts that I was applying for were predominantly of Caucasian descent or whatever. And I had to be self-conscious of making sure my hair was straight and making sure I was like, I couldn't go in there talking like, well, yeah, I'm Andriana from Stuttgart, Arkansas. Yes. I couldn't go in there acting like that. And so I had to talk proper, so to speak. And I realized once I got the job that I had other kids that looked like me. And I was like, well, no, these kids need somebody to look up to. These kids need to see themselves in me. So, hey, I'm wearing braids. I'm wearing my natural every so often. But I can't believe that we stress out about hair in business settings, professional settings. There's even an act out right now about the Crown Act on how we have hair discrimination in the workplace. So I'm glad that things like that are happening because then that transitioned over into my own personal business as to how I show up every day for my customers. And my customers want to see themselves in me too. So I had to be a representation of them. If I want to be a mouthpiece for Black mamas in Arkansas, I had to show up like them. So it was like a almost identity crisis of, should I continue to do this because this is my main job? Should I still show up like the, I don't know, little Southern girl from Stuttgart, Arkansas? Or should I come in talking like I eat tea and crumpets every day? Because I don't know which way should I go. But then when I finally realized, hey, my ideal customer is somebody like me, and y'all know I'm goofy anyway, I need to represent the goofy people that's out there that look like me, because people want to see themselves when they shopping around, and I just want to be that person for them.
First of all, I gotta say, tea and crumpets is good. I had to say that first of all. I know that's like a running thing that we say, but it's actually good. If you've never had a crumpet with some peanut butter, it's good. But anyway, I digress. In everyday life, I think is where I struggle with it more because I find that my business is very social. So if you're coming to me, chances are we had some kind of connection. More than not, I'll say maybe 8 times out of 10, somebody is reaching out to me because we've had some kind of social connection and it's trickled over. And now you're either purchasing a product, a service, or you want to run a business as well. There's very few people that will see me say something specific or talk about a sale and they're like, hey, I want that too. And it just be all business. So socially, I struggle only because it's like, it's that thin line, like Andriana is saying, between being like, do I come in and I just be like, hi, I'm Tameka, or do I immediately let out that big cackle that's like, ew, girl, like pull back a little bit. Like it's difficult, right? Because I call myself an introverted extrovert. I'm going to stand in the back of the room, and we've talked about this on several episodes. I'm going to stand in the back of the room, or I'm going to be standing next to my husband, or whatever the case may be, catch a vibe. Like, I'm not going to just wander off and insert myself in conversations, because I'm like, I want to catch a vibe. Do I feel like dealing with drama I feel over here? No, I'm going to stay over, And so that can come off already as shy, and then or stuck up, because usually I get stuck up. But then people, when they get to know me, are like, I thought you were so quiet, like you're super loud. Like, I get it, I'm very loud. I do have to be reminded on a pretty regular basis, like, I'm right here. My sister's watching, she's probably like, oh my gosh, I know, because she's always telling me, I'm right next to you, why are you yelling? And I promise you that I'm not. But it makes you very aware, right? That you're going to be this specific kind of way. In my business, I worried about, a lot of it was just language for me. I know how I talk. It kind of in between. I grew up, spent a lot of time in England. So I've had very proper Queen's English conversations, accents, words, but then it could like interject some flavor at the same time. But I was always very cognizant of like, should I speak that way? Should I use, double negatives? And for a while I didn't. And I know we've talked about this. I used to show up on, first of all, I was already like super against going live or showing up in my stories, because it just felt weird. I hate hearing my own voice. But then it was like, and if I show up this way, am I turning off probably a big demographic of people who are paying attention to me? And then am I going to make the other side of me be like, why is she acting like that? Because I know she don't talk like that on a regular basis. And then you turn people off. It took a really long time, but I was uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to say it. I had to think way too much. And that's where I struggle with this topic. It's like, when does it become like, if it's natural to you, like when Dayna was speaking, in my mind, I was like, a lot of times we switch conversation up, or we will speak a little more plainly if we feel like the situation warrants some comfort, right? If you go into a room full of people that you just feel like, okay, I gotta tone down a little bit, bring my Detroit swag, but I gotta keep it down. It's not changing who you are, but I feel like it's reading the temperature of the room. But when is it like over the top, because you're like, well, I don't want to offend anybody by just being myself? Or when is it like socially acceptable? Like, are you gonna accept me, or am I cutting? And it just is like, for me, it just was like, at the end of the day, as long as I'm not intentionally offending anybody, or intentionally targeting somebody, excluding somebody, like, I'm just okay with showing up the way that I am. I mean, a piece of my struggle too is being military my entire life by association. So you walk a very straight and narrow, because there's always like, you got to show up a certain way, you have to carry yourself a certain way, you got to do certain things. So that's always there too, inherently. But I had to give it up. And I'm sure I've had people like click the unfollow, and I've had to be okay with that, because I just don't know, honestly. And Dayna probably has some pearls of wisdom for, I just really don't know how that you stay true to who you are and not be yourself. And I know it's probably not even synonymous, but to me, I'm like, if I mean, I'm in a hoodie and you can only see my top half, but I'm super unprofessional. So if this was a professional call, it would be like, you missed the mark. Like, the camera would be off. But I know all three of us show up. Sometimes we all are on here super glam, and sometimes it's just me looking rough, or, it's somebody else. Like, but outside of the obvious, like I said, showing up to a business meeting, like, you're not going to go in there looking crazy. You're not going to, be in a professional settings. Like, that's common sense. But, when does the line get drawn that it's like, okay, you're just not for me, and that's okay, instead of being like, you're not you're not accepted. That's not accepted.
So I think along with that, I think where, again, in business and personal, even if you don't have a business, and let's say you're just working a secular job, power. right? So power then comes into play to figure out, to a certain extent, how we show up. And what I mean by that, so I do want to touch a little bit more when Andriana brought up like the Crown Act, right? And the reason I want to bring that up is because the reason it's such a big issue is there's only 13 states that said, hey, you cannot discriminate somebody and not give them a job because of their hair, right? There's only 13 out of 50, y'all. So the rest of the states can very well, and not necessarily tell you, but you walk in the door looking a certain way and be like, we're not giving her the job because she doesn't look professional, right? Because she has an afro or because she has braids. And to me, it's not professional, right? So at that point, right, if you in a situation where I got to feed my babies, I got to feed my kids, right? You have the power over me to keep me from eating or not eating in this industry or in this area or wherever I live. So at that point, yes, I can say I have the right to wear my hair the way I want to. I have the right to show up the way I want to. You do, but they keep telling you no, right? Every job interview you go to. So obviously they have some discrimination and biases, right? And so do you switch it up and say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and get this job. And then when I'm comfortable, go back to who I am and wear my hair to where I'm, because I'm in the job now, right? Or do you say, I'll just keep looking. I'll just keep going. And so I think that there's that power, right? So the reason it's so important for us as Black women is we've only more recently gone through these transitions, right? It was as soon, I had pulled some of these numbers up. So federal legislation has reintroduced this Crown Act in March of 2021, y'all. That's only 2 years ago, right? This is something that's like being fought right now. This isn't something that we're talking about, back in the 60s, right? No, like this is something that's an issue now. So this is something that we've had to adapt to, and not necessarily even because we wanted to change who we were, but this is what the standard was, right? If you want this job, this is what you need to look like. So to me, it would be similar to, hey, at this job, you have to wear all Black. Well, if you don't own any Black, you're going to go out there and you're going to buy the Black because you need this job to eat. In a similar fashion, there's aspects of us, we can still be 100% genuinely who we are, but because you have the power, or I shouldn't say you, but like they have the power, right? Now I have to conform just so I can have a job, just so I can have clientele, just so I can have certain things. And I'll kind of just going with this. I'll never forget this. And granted, he was an amazing, amazing client of mine when I owned my own spa. Loved him to death. He passed, but he was a Jewish man. And there was one day I was trying to transition into my natural hair. And and y'all can light it up in the comments if you understand the struggle. When you're first transitioning, it's not always easy, y'all. You got your rough days, you got your good days, right? So some days you look like Kunta Kinte, some days you looking like, this is on fire, right? So I'll be 100% honest. It was kind of like a let's tuck it up in a hat. It's a little rough, but I'm still going with the natural, right? And this man legit paid me a tip that was double of the service. And he was like, if you need help to go get your hair done, I will take you to get your hair done, right? And I was blown away. Thankfully, we had a relationship where I could like kind of cut into him like, hey, actually, this is my natural hair. This is what it is. You know what I mean? It's not, I couldn't afford to get my hair done. It was, this is what I'm transitioning into. And he started understanding, because then he would start seeing me show up more naturally. But I use that example because it was a bias that, again, it was innocent on his behalf, right? He wasn't sitting up here saying like, oh, he just had never seen me wear my hair like that before as I'm transitioning. And he's thinking, oh, well, the only reason her hair is looking like that is maybe she couldn't afford it, right? He's thinking he's doing something nice, right? So the more conversations we have, I think that's where we can start transitioning this ideology. And when I think about like my parents, right? Sometimes it meant their life, you know what I mean, having to show up a certain way, right? If you went certain areas and you talked too loud or did certain things, right, they would kill you, right? So I think we got to put all of those pieces in play, and it's almost like we're at a generation where we have to relearn some of these things. We have to say, hey, actually, that's not acceptable. That's not okay. So to me, I will say there are spaces where you might have to do a little shift, right? But I don't think that if we core line, love who we are, appreciate who we are, we know when it's time to show up a certain way and it's time to not show up a certain way. And there might be times when we might have to show up just to get a certain place so that we can have our own and not have to worry about that anymore. But that's just kind of my thoughts on that.
To circle back to the question that Tameka had for you, Dayna, because I know you do a lot of speaking engagements, you're an author and all that. How do you stay true to being Dayna and then show up as, I don't know, being goofy? Because I could see you have a goofy side. So how do you stay true to that and then still handle this over here?
I don't know. I think Tameka can answer this. Yeah, look, I'm in front of how many people? I'm pretty sure I showed up 100% Dayna. Look, I had all them people listening to Kendrick Lamar DNA. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to. I always say, like, I probably couldn't have been born at a different time period because I'd have been dead. Like, I wouldn't have made it to 12 because I don't know how to tone me down. I don't know how to not show up like 100% Dayna. So even to Tameka's point, I'm loud, I'm boisterous. When I come in a room, it's like, hey, like everybody knows Dayna's there. Like, I don't know that I really have that button, but I will say then even from a young age, I had to create a life that I had to control, right? So when I worked for somebody else, that didn't work for me. So I knew I need to stack until I can build my own, right? Or even now, how I work my businesses, I need to create my own. Because I will say at the end of the day, your people are out there, right? You will find them, but you might have to be patient. You might have to realize that it's going to be a little bit longer of a road for you because you're not willing to conform. It might be a little bit longer for you because you aren't in the space to attract certain people. And even actually, like, because I think me and Tameka have a lot of similarities, like where you might be the one that was rough around the edges when they first met you, but then they're like, oh no, she cool. I like her, right? Like she I can get down with that. And I feel like it's important to have a little bit of that flair too. It's funny because I was doing, like, I always go down these rabbit holes with like people's life stories, and I was just even thinking about like this one interview I heard of Marvin Gaye. Mind you, he was a basket case, but one of the things that he talked about with his music and why it was so important for him to get into the mainstream is because he really wanted to share about another message, right? He wanted to share about the war. He wanted to share about the conditions and how we could better our planet and things like that. But he knew he had to play the game in order to get that power, to get in that position, to then be able to show up authentically him. And there was a lot of stuff that he passed over, like when he was with Motown, because he was like, that wasn't me, right? That I can't conform to be that person anymore because I have a message, I have a story, and I need to share it. So I guess that was a really long answer to that, but I feel like there's times you have to play the game. And I feel like there's times where you have to get yourself in a place of power where you're not reliant on a source that could suppress you for being you.
I was gonna say that I think that's like perfect that you brought up Marvin Gaye and just a situation because like Dayna did, she showed up, but I think it would have been ridiculous had Dayna come on as a different persona. This legitimately was a female empowerment, a women's empowerment conference. like that would have just been the biggest like oxymoron for her to come in as somebody else and not be herself. Like I think there is a way to, and if you've ever heard Kendrick Lamar's DNA song, like it can, you could take it anyway, right? But I think it's how you present yourself, because there is a way, like obviously any of us could show up harshly and like crazy and in our personalities, and then there's other ways to just be like, you know what, she's just honest, this is, I love that she shows herself. Or you could be like I said, the other side, and that thing is a fool, right? But the other piece to that, like Dayna mentioned about herself and about Marvin Gaye, is if you put yourself into a position like you're running your own business, and we're talking about opportunities, you get to choose. Like you get to choose like things that you want to do. So if you know that maybe this doesn't feel right, maybe I can't show up, you say no to the opportunity and you go on to the next one, or you go where people are going to allow you to be yourself. Like we're seeing that more and more. We've said it before, like our kids are lucky to grow up in kind of this sway of things that are happening, because we didn't see it a lot as young women ourselves, where people were like just saying no. We saw people just doing the thing because they felt like, well, if I just do this thing that I'm super uncomfortable doing, it'll get me to the next level. But then it doesn't, because you get pigeonholed as this one thing, right? We see all the time with like movie stars. They're like, well, I got pegged as being, somebody's mom. So they play every role as somebody's mom when really they want to be the stripper agent or, something wild, but they can't, because the world has already said you're everybody's mother, right? So I think it's, and you will, like Dayna said, and she made some amazing points, and I knew she would, that you might grow slower, you might progress slower in business if you're not willing to step outside and do things that are a little bit like, and I'm not saying be unethical or go against your morals and your values, y'all. But if you're just like, I'm absolutely not going to go into a room where I have to, I don't know, stand up and I can't sit down and speak, then that's a choice. You might miss out on those thousands of people or whatever the case may be. But I think that's part of the freedom, is choosing, like, I get to be in this place where I feel comfortable, feel accepted, or uncomfortable, but accepted to be who I am and continue to grow. And I think that's where we have to find ourselves. Or again, what are you willing to grow much slower? Because that's the choice that I made. I was like, I'm willing to do things my own way, my own pace, doing the things that feel comfortable to me, because I feel uncomfortable and like I can't produce and serve people the way that I want to if I can't be myself, right? If I can't be myself, again, in the way that I've mentioned, I'm not offending anybody, and I'm very open to somebody being like, you was tripping. Right? I might cry about it later, but I mean, you can absolutely tell me that, and we can have an agree to disagree conversation or a come to Jesus moment if that's what it takes. But I'm setting myself up for those, those places, and it may take slower. There are some things that I can bend on, like, okay, I don't like wearing dresses, but you want me to wear a dress. Okay, well, I'll find a dress that makes me comfortable. Right? Or I absolutely would rather wear sneakers, but you want me to, okay, I'll do that. Right? There are some things that you can bend to, or, I have to speak very whatever. Like there are some things that I can do and I'm willing to do, and then there's other things that are just like, you know what, if being me doesn't fit into, or you don't want me to talk about this certain topic, or I can't say this certain thing, I'm not for you, clearly, because there are things you don't want me to do that are natural to me. And I think that is such a powerful place and option that we have now, that we can choose. You can choose to say, yes, I want to take the opportunity. You can choose to go to the school. You can choose to accept the job. Like, yes, things may take a little longer, but you have a choice. So choose. And I think that's major in this conversation, because I mean, heck, maybe even 10 years ago. Well, that's true, because I've been out of the traditional workforce for about that long. And I didn't, even then. There were things that I had to just be like, granted, it was a government job, so there's that. But there are things that you have to like, Lord, don't don't put me on Snap today, right? Choices, and that's not very long ago. So we're in a better place to be able to do that. But again, conversely, right, we can't be on the opposite side running around acting a plum fool just because we feel like that's who we are, because ain't nobody gonna put up with that.
I will say too, somebody has to start the conversation, and you need to be okay then with those consequences. So even if you want to be out here acting a fool and you want to have all your business out there, just understand that that is a little bit different than just pieces that are authentically you. Because to me, if you saying, "Oh, I get drunk and I go to the club and I'm sleeping a bunch of," that's not really a that's not your personality. That's just like that was a choice, right? Like, so if you want to be out here in these streets and you want to do all of that and then you want to broadcast it, to me, that's consequences of your action. That's a little different than not necessarily being authentic to who you are. I mean, I don't know, maybe getting drunk is authentic to who you are. I don't know, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I just think that it's one of those things that, regardless, you have to realize there's going to be consequences to your action. And I do think it's important to know somebody has to go first, right? So somebody had to lose the job because of their hair and bring it up like, hey, this is discrimination. This is wrong, right? For the next people to be able to come in and say, hey, this is an actual issue that we need to address. So somebody does have to go first. And unfortunately, that person that gets sacrificed first, it's going to take a time for other people to then, and when I say other people, I mean other people on the other side, to then realize, okay, my viewpoint is skewed. It's not appropriate for this scenario. This is how I need to adjust to it. Because I even think of, like, for me, there's more transitioning that is happening, and I'm learning more about how to refer to people and things like that, even like the pronouns thing. I'm ignorant of some of this stuff, right? But that doesn't mean that I can't be educated to be able to respect somebody else, if that makes any sense. But on that flip side, if I'm on the other end of something like that, you know what I mean? Somebody has to correct me. Somebody has to say, hey, like, this is how you actually should show up, or this is how you should vocalize it or say it, because this is how it makes me feel, right? Because then it gives all parties a opportunity to make adjustments, to make changes, and to say, hey, actually, this is an issue. I didn't even realize I had that discrimination against someone else that was there. So I do think someone has to go first. It's not always pretty, y'all, but there might be consequences to you saying, hey, I'm going to be authentically me, and it's okay. But I have a strong, like, I'm optimist about, like, the future of where we're going, because I do feel like even within my generation, we have addressed some of these things and had conversations, so people are more accepting of it. They're more open. They're more like, okay, this is the issue. Let's address it. Let's talk about it.
It's like the red lipstick. It's how women felt about red lipstick. And nobody talked about it before on here. Like, I love me some red lipstick, but it does. Yeah, I see you, baby. Pop it, pop it. But it has come with, like, right, like, some stigmas. It was seen as, Jezebel, and it was you were asking for attention wearing this bright lipstick. And I'm like, I just think it looks good. Like, there's too much attached to this color for it to just be what it is, right? I love that. This is definitely one that can go on and on, but I would love to know, we would love to hear you guys sound off in the comments. Let us know if this is something that you struggle with. Has this been something that you've come across in your job? I know hair is a big one, a really big one. That I have a sister that lost a job over her hair, but so it is a thing, and we would love to hear, like, have these been things that you've run into? Are you currently facing this in your personal life, your business, and you're making the choice to switch it up? We would love to just hear your thoughts, because it's your life, boo. And I love hearing different perspectives, right? You may be like, I'm good with switching it up, and when I go home, completely somebody different that works for you. we want to hear your thoughts and your feelings on it, and just where you stand on this topic of, is it socially acceptable or not? When is it a repression of your soul, or when is it just, being professional, right? Y'all know how we do. It's in the comments. If you missed any of the episodes leading up to this point, make sure you click on that YouTube channel, go and follow it. We are here every Wednesday, same time, same place, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 Central. Make sure you share this out. Join in the conversation. If you saw last week's episode, then if we see your questions and we didn't answer them, chances are you're going to get a whole episode to yourself. So make sure you hit us with those comments, questions, topics, because that's what we're here to do. We want to shed light into areas that are dark, shed light. We don't mind talking about the things that are a little controversial. Just bring it to us, right? We'll create a whole episode. We'll bring you on. We'll answer it live like we did last week. So we would love to have you sound off in the comments, and we will see everybody next week. Same time, same place. Much love, y'all.